Maybe you might need the reports too.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Can't spit on my finger.
You don't need to share with me. You can-
All right. Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I just want to suggest to people that you remember to use your microphones because we're tied in directly to the video so that people can hear us. So I'll remind you if you don't, and you remind me if I don't, all right? Okay, so our first motion is the approval of the agenda, and I have a motion moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Sherry Wan, that the rules of procedure order be suspended to move delegation presentations up in the agenda to follow the mayor's remarks. And further, that the agenda for the regular council meeting for May 24th, 2022 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments?
Yes, there is a couple of amendments. Under number 8 was staff reports, items G and H. Those 2 reports are being deferred and there's a resolution to defer those. Those are under the fire and emergency services. And also the same under fire and emergency, the bylaws under number 12, 32 and 33 are being removed at this time. And that's all.
You can tell us that again when we get there.
I will.
Okay, good. All right, so all those in favor of the amended agenda? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. And I have a motion moved by Sherry Wan, seconded by Bill McDonald, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held May the 10th, 2022 be approved as presented, and that the minutes of the special council meeting held May the 18th, 2022 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments to those minutes?
No, there are not.
Okay, so as presented. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, mayor's remarks. Wow, what a weekend we've had. I want to sincerely thank the roads department and the fire department and anyone who's volunteered to go out and cut up trees and move branches off roads. And it was a wild few minutes, but has created a lot of havoc. Jamie sent or actually called me early on the Saturday to forewarn me that it was happening and that we might have to pull the control group together. And estimated time at that point was 2:30 to 3 o'clock that it was going to happen. And then afterwards, he called to say that it looked like it went further north and Plevna was fairly hard hit, Plevna area. And we got off relatively good in comparison. There have been many, many people without power. I'm still one of those that probably won't have power until Friday, if then. But I think slowly we're getting the areas back. I did see that Arden folks can get water at the fire hall over the next few days if they need it. I think they're going to be later getting their power as well. We've had some township damage to this back of this hall, to the medical center shingles. That's all I've heard so far, but there could be more. So there will be cleanup going on for days, but our staff are doing an excellent job. So guys, please let the roads crews thank them for us because they didn't have much of a break of a holiday. They were out with their chainsaws. We got a lot of roads with a lot of trees that they've dealt with. On Saturday, I attended a very beautiful memorial for Rosemary Bowick in this hall, and the presentation of the greening of the park, the beach with all the new trees that were planted. And I meant to bring the pamphlet that was handed out. Maybe I can get Bill to give us a couple to leave at the township office. A beautiful tribute to that lady. And Allison and Wayne and I were all there, and just a great turnout. Lots of family, lots of people from the community there to take part in it. And it was a very, very excellent time. And I think that's about it. Is there anything else, Kathy, that's coming up?
No, there's nothing, Madam Mayor. Well, back, I guess there would be on this 6th of June. Everyone remember to write that down at 4. Then we have the other meeting with Glenn Tunnock dealing with the zoning. So just that's a reminder.
And I did see there was something the county put out about from AMO about a deeper look at the planning stuff. It just came across my email. I'll send it to Kathy and she can forward it to everyone.
And I know they're talking about the delegation, the delegation of powers for subdivision, that kind of things that's happening. So we'll be doing that as well, be coming forth to council.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add? Bill?
Yeah, I just want to repeat what the mayor said in regard to the effort that was put out by the volunteers and the municipality. It brought a lot of memories back from the ice storm in '98. But the fact that they were out there and it was still raining and it was still high winds and that sort of thing, I just want to add my commendation to the mayor's remarks and thumbs up to the public works and the fire department and the paramedics. They were all there. It was wonderful.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Nikki, go ahead.
I'd just like to remind everybody this Saturday at the Parham Ball Field, the youth are having a youth celebration. They've organized, there'll be touch a truck with the fire department and the police department there. There'll be tomahawk throwing, face painting, the library's coming and doing some type of games. The early on will be there with younger games. They're going to have pickleball, basketball, some other activities all set up. There'll be raffles. They're fundraising.
What time does it start?
12 to 3. And the
12 till
canteen will
3.
be open as well.
Excellent. Good. Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, we are going to move to our delegation. And we have Wayne and Allison with us tonight, who are going to talk about a proposal from the Charlotte Lake Business Group. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having us. How close do you want it? There? Better? Is that okay? We won't take up too much of your time, but just to give a little history for anyone that might not have been following the trail, we provided a strategic action plan that the Economic Development Committee worked on for 2 years, and you all have a copy of that. In that process, 7 action items were delineated from a multitude of possibilities for how to revitalize the village area. The top priority in that revitalization exercise surveyed of the community was that the community public washrooms needed to be brought up to today's standards, that they just weren't filling the bill. And we sent the action plan out to all the stakeholders and possible supporters, one of which was the business group. And at the last business group meeting, which was May 16th, the committee, without me initiating anything, said, we really need to get on that item. That action is identified as immediate in the strategic plan. And what we're experiencing from a business standpoint is that the trail really has touched on an interest that we all hope for. We're having the trail heavily used already before it's totally reconnected. 200 ATVs and four-wheelers came through about 3 weeks ago. And at the time, there was nowhere to eat and there was nowhere to go to the washroom. That was a comment that came back. So it seemed to trip the people at the business group to say, why don't we, since we've said we'll support or sponsor or champion an action, and this one is top priority, that we approach the revitalization committee for approval to set up a working group. So the request today is for that. It did pass at the revitalization, at the Economic Development Committee. So there was a motion to bring before council for permission to set up a working group. So that's the process. The working group, from the letter that we presented to the Economic Development Committee, read, Charlotte Lake Business Group proposes that an Economic Development Committee apply to council for permission to establish a working committee of Township Council to analyze the present facilities, consult with stakeholders, and develop a proposal to raise the necessary capital for the construction of a proper long-term facility for the township. We propose that the project will include Public Works Department. So obviously not flying on our own, but working through the staff. And coming up with a proposal, we realize the budget's gone for this year, so it would be something that would be considered in 23. And it isn't really even coming after council to budget for it, but rather to see what funding is out there that we can tap into. There's trails, there is provincial grants and all sorts of things. So we just feel the time is right. We're very concerned that on that day, I spoke with the Charlotte Lake Inn. They had people just rolling in wanting to use their washrooms. Brad Long isn't open yet. And if he had been there and the washrooms were available, they would have been going. I just think we can't leave the responsibility of public washrooms to the business group, the businesses rather. So that's what we're looking for, permission to do a study and figure out what would be the best route with what we already have.
Good.
Period.
Okay. Questions or comments? Bill?
Yes, I'll start off through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. And thank you for the interest, because I've traveled pretty well all over Canada. And when you stop at most recreation places, they have proper washrooms. And whereas that washroom was designed and filled a role to this point, it's time we moved on and become a little more modern. I even noticed that the Charlotte Lake Provincial Park has rebuilt all of their washroom facilities. And so I look forward to the report that will come back, but from this chair at this time, maybe I'll still be here when the report comes back, but I'll certainly support this project. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. And maybe at this point I can read the motion and then you can discuss the specifics in the motion. So the motion is moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Sherry Wan. Whereas the Charlotte Lake Business Group has approached the Economic Development Committee for a solution to the Charlotte Lake Beach washrooms. And whereas the Economic Development Committee passed a motion at its May 16th meeting requesting that council direct staff to work with the Charlotte Lake Business Group as a working committee to analyze the washroom facilities at the Charlotte Lake Beach and develop a proposal to raise the necessary capital to update or replace the present washroom facilities. And whereas the Downtown Charlotte Lake Revitalization Strategic Action Plan recommended as a high priority that the municipality investigate the conditions of the beach public washroom infrastructure to determine what is required to improve their appearance, capacity, safety, accessibility, and environmental impact, considered design, function, and cost. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive the presentation from Allison and Wayne Robinson of the Charlotte Lake Business Group for information, and further that the Public Works facility staff work with the Charlotte Lake Business Group to develop a proposed design and explore funding opportunities with a goal to have this project funded and built in 2023. So do the work this year with the idea of having it completed next year. Okay, any questions or comments on that motion? Sherry?
I just wanted to take the opportunity as well to thank the Economic Development Group for initiating this. I think it's great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, if there aren't any more comments, all those in favor? It's unanimous, carried.
Thanks
So,
very much, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. There are no deferred items. We are at Public Works. I have a motion moved by Sherry Wan, seconded by Bill McDonald. Whereas RFQ PW 2022-13 was released on April the 6th, 2022 to procure this and supply and delivery of a wheeled excavator on a rent-to-own program with a closing date of April 21st, 2022, and only one bid submission was received from Hardington Equipment. And whereas the Public Works Manager has reviewed the bid and has evaluated according to the criteria outlined in the RFQ. And whereas an opportunity to purchase the equipment without the cost of rental fees has been presented by the supplier. And whereas the Public Works Manager is recommending acceptance of this submission based on recent discussions to enter into a lease agreement with the supplier rather than a rent-to-own program. Now therefore be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the Public Works Manager and award Hardington Equipment as the successful supplier of the wheeled excavator. And further, that Public Works Manager be authorized to have a purchase order issued after finalizing a lease agreement with the local equipment supplier satisfactory to the Public Works and CAO clerk or treasurer. Discussion. Brent and then Bill?
I'm Philip. but,
Sorry, I'm sorry. It's COVID. It's COVID.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to just ask if the tender or the request for proposals or quotes had it been worded differently other than a rental option, would there been a possibility of having more people bid or entertain the request?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Smith. When we put initial feelers out for this, there was more companies interested. I think it was actually the deadline of wanting a piece of equipment in our possession in the year of 2023 is what disqualified lots of the possible bidders. I think a lot of them, you sometimes get companies that just stroke it out and they'll write, here's my bid for 2024. But in this situation, I think they saw that we needed it 2023 because we don't want to keep waiting. And I think that's why some of them chose not to bid. I can't speak to whether if it was worded differently, if they would have bid or not, but that's the reason that I think that we only received one submission. The companies that we reached out to beforehand, they did show interest in the rent to own program. It sounded like the deadline was hard for them to meet.
Okay. Bill?
Through you, Madam Mayor, a couple of questions. Is Hardington Equipment taking back some of our used equipment as a trade-in value on this piece of equipment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McDonald, Hardington didn't offer us very much value for our piece of equipment. They highly recommended for us to sell it privately. Now, due to some recent policy upgrading, we've been able to advertise our surplus equipment through Gov Deals, which is an online bidding platform, and we were able to get the advertisement for that out through a little broader social media advertising. And we've actually received some really, really excellent prices for our surplus equipment. So that's something I was going to update council on. Is in my report, I estimated combined for the Liebherr and some of our other surplus equipment that it should have been surplus long ago. I estimated an approximate 55,000 combined. And when we checked Bid and Go, a lot of stuff was closing today. When we checked Bid and Go before we left, we're actually up to 106,000 for our surplus, so that will actually bring down the 2023 projected impact down to closer to between 175 and 180. So
Excellent.
I think the Liebherr itself, Steve can maybe kind of shout over my shoulder here, but I believe the Liebherr itself, we've got a bid currently at $29,000 for that.
Good.
If I may continue through you, Madam Mayor,
Yep.
I got a couple of questions regarding this piece of equipment we're purchasing. Is it a new piece of equipment? What year is it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McDonald, it's a new non-current model. So it's a 2019, but with no hours. And all of the warranty starts from the date that shows up on our premises.
Okay, thank you. That was the other part about in regard to warranty on this, if it was new or used. Just a comment, I think this is a good purchase because what this does is it eliminates the need to float this piece of equipment around through the township. It can actually be driven. Am I correct in this assumption? Thank you.
Correct, Councillor McDonald. It can be driven, but also can be floated as well for those long hauls. We don't want the wear and tear. We got the option of both. A little more background on the reason. It may seem what you may ask why, if we're current wheel excavator is worth 30,000 and this new one, why would we need a new one right now? We've had some really bad luck with this equipment. I'm not sure if it's its age or what, but it has caused us more downtime than operating time. We haven't been able to hardly use this Liebherr at all. Also, this price includes the attachments such as a actual twist or wrist ditching bucket. So shaping ditches a little nicer, but the number one thing that as soon as we get this equipment, we're gonna be brushing with it because some price includes a new brusher, which has got a value of about 50 grand as well. So
Good.
that's gonna keep us, keep our wheel excavator operating and not in the shop.
Excellent. Good. Okay, any other questions or comments? Nikki, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I just want to clarify, it's an election year, so are we allowed to spend on next year's budget? This, okay, I just wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Gowdy, the one thing I wanted to mention is that's part of the reason why we're in this situation with requesting a rent to own, and maybe that's kind of answers your question as well, Councillor Smith, but we try to do this without having any more downtime with our Liebherr. And the reason we put it out for a rent to own is also so we could get using it, get brushing again, but not commit council, because if council could technically still make the decision with the rent to own program, they could have made the decision not to purchase it. Now, this lease agreement too, you know, if council absolutely decided in 2023, we could end the lease agreement and we could surplus that equipment and we could not purchase it and we would lose the interest. And I'm sure we'd get a really good value back for it because of the demand right now. So I don't think we're putting too much council too much outside of their comfort zones. That's what we try to do anyways.
Okay. It makes sense. If it doesn't work, then we don't want it long-term, right? So we have to make it work. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Motion's carried. We do have some brush to be cut, that's for sure. The storm has shown us that. All right, that's it for Public Works. Now we have Treasury. I have a motion moved by Sherry One. Okay, I have a motion moved by Sherry One and seconded by Bill McDonald that council approve the check distribution reports totaling $538,102.25 as prepared by the treasurer. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Next, we have apportionment of taxes moved by Bill McDonald, seconded by Sherry One. That council approve the following apportionments of assessment as recommended by impact for 2021 and 2022 as applicable for the following numbers. And there are a number of those numbers on that motion. Any questions or comments on any of those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Sherry One, seconded by Bill McDonald, that council approve the following reduction of assessment pursuant to the Municipal Act. Roll numbers 1039, 040, 020, 213, McCullough, Stephen Jason, and Lori Ann Mary for the period of January 23rd to December 31st, 2022, as reported by impact, reason raised by fire, demolition, or otherwise 357 1DI. Roll number 1039, 070, 010, 300, 341, 10,000, Hammond, Gary J. and Stephanie for the period of January 21 to December 31, 2022, as reported by impact, reason raised by fire, demolition, or otherwise 357 1DI. And roll number 1039, 080, 040, 181,000, Hickey, Ellen May Estate for the period of April 8th to December 31st, 2022, as reported by impact, reason damaged and sustainably unusable, 357 1DII. And further, that council approve an adjustment of taxes to be calculated by the tax department for the related period. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Bill McDonald. We're going to wait until we have the audit findings. Then we'll do this motion. Okay? Okay. Who is she?
Thank you. Oh, that's on.
So Michael, you introduced Kara. You work with her all the time and I can't even see her.
Hi,
There
I'm here,
she
sorry.
There we go. So this is Kara Chesney, who's our auditor, lead auditor with MNP. She has a very good team that we work with each year, and she's going to do a wonderful presentation. Better than I do.
Thanks for having me. All right, sorry, we are just having some internet connection issues at home. So hopefully we don't have any problems here. Usually it's because my children have arrived home and take up a bunch of the bandwidth. So everyone has been warned to get off. Okay, so thanks again for having me. So I've had the opportunity to meet a number of the members of Township in the past. So my name is Kara Chesney and I am the partner who in charge of the audit for the Township. So this is just our typical end of year report on where we are at and the result of our findings. And I will have time for questions as well at the end. So why am I here today telling you about this? So the purpose today is really to give you an update on the audit of the consolidated financial statements, as well as communicate any significant matters that I would typically communicate or that are required to be communicated under the standards, and then discuss any other matters of interest. You probably may have seen this before. This is our draft auditor's opinion. So it is what we call a draft clean or unqualified audit opinion. So basically what that means is we have not found anything in terms of our audit work that would make the financial statements we present to you be materially misstated. So basically there are no material errors based on the work that we have done. Our materiality is based on the revenues, and that's set at $400,000 with a posting threshold of $20,000. So we will bring into attention any issue we see above $20,000 and ask that it be corrected. The audit is substantially complete. So we've done all the actual field work. We were out for a few weeks in the early winter, with the exception of we just have to do a final review of the financial statements, including the notes. We'll have to do our final quality review. Our final quality assurance partner has to complete their review. So there's always two partners who do the reviews. And then we need the management representation letter, as well as council approval of the consolidated financial statements. In terms of the audit work we did not have any difficulties encountered, and we did not make any changes to the initial audit plan or have any disagreements with management. There were also no new accounting or auditing standards required or that impacted the financial statements in the last year. In terms of what we do when we come out and do an audit, so it includes a review of all significant accounting and management reporting systems. So we do evaluate the systems themselves as well as the controls in place. And anything with any material year imbalance, key transactions, or other significant areas. We do an understanding of management's controls within the organization. So basically making sure that when there's key controls that have been documented, we make sure that they're in place and that they're working according to how we would expect them to. And in terms of our specific areas of focus, we spend a lot of time on revenue cutoff and recognition. So making sure all the revenues are recorded in the right period. When you're getting government grants, that they're recorded in accordance with the terms of those grants. So that's where we do a lot of work around deferred revenue. We also do some work around tax revenues, specifically making sure, and we do some testing just to make sure that the members of staff are still paying the right amount of rates. So that's what we do in terms of just to make sure there's no significant to cover our fraud risk. There's always an expected presumption that there's a fraud risk in revenue, and so we do some work there just to make sure everyone's sort of paying the rates that have been approved. The audit outcomes, so we only have one adjustment. There was an adjustment last year in relation to capitalization of some assets that was reversed, so should have been adjusted last year, but was corrected in 2021. So the overall end of year numbers are correct. It's just we basically have an opening balance adjustment where we had an entry that was corrected in 2021 that relates to 2020. In terms of internal control weaknesses, so the one thing we did note, in this is more of a recommendation to council, there should be a formal policy in place for authorizing, reviewing, and documenting pay changes. So we do a test around pay changes. They do get approved, but sometimes there's not always a formal policy as to how that should happen. And then there should be a formal policy in place for estimating useful life of capital assets. So when you get a new piece of equipment or you construct a new building, some sort of policy in place that would guide what useful life would be used would be helpful. None of these are significant control weaknesses. They're just more improvements to the process. In terms of the results for this year, so this is the statement of financial position. So we often call this the balance sheet. It is the, where are you sitting at today? So it reports the total value of the assets and liabilities on a mostly a cost basis. And it shows your ability to meet, the township's ability to meet liabilities and commitments in the future. The overall surplus has improved and the net financial assets have improved this year. So basically what that means is if you took all your cash and your investments and receivables and you use them to pay all the liabilities that are outstanding that you would have to pay if you closed up shop, not that that would happen, you have more money, you would have more money left than you did last year. So the net financial asset position is about just under 6.5 million. So really good, healthy numbers. In terms of the big changes this year, there was a decrease in accounts receivable, primarily due to a receivable from the ICIP program that was due at the end of 2020 and it was received in 2021. There was also a decrease in accounts payable and accrued liabilities. Last year, there was a large amount owed on the SL Village project, which that was paid during the year. There is an increase in long-term liabilities due to the new 1.8 million PPP loan. Okay, you see that in the increase from the 2.1 to the 3.4. One of the other things we sort of like to highlight was the history of capital asset additions. So this would have been, I would say, about a normal or a more stable year. We've had, you can see in the history going back to 2013, we have some low years and then they grow and then you have a big year. This is sort of in the midpoint. So obviously these assets are key to being able to provide services. This would include all assets, buildings, vehicles, equipment, computers, everything that's needed to provide the services in the township, roads. So the annual consumption is and use of capital assets gets expensed. So the assets themselves get expensed over the useful life. And the current estimated capital consumption is 63%. So the assets are about 63% used, consistent with last year. And again, fairly consistent with the types of assets that you have in place. And the fact that, assets are sort of turning over, every so many years, but no significant change, no significant aging. The assets are actually a little bit younger than they were last year. These are the additions in terms of the breakdown during the year. So the biggest one is roads. So that was the biggest area that had significant additions done this year. The biggest one's actually vehicles, followed by roads. So you can see the pie chart breakdown, as well as the Frontenac Community Arena. Those were the top three, with a little bit of additions in some of the other categories. I talked briefly about where things ended the last year. So the surplus of the township was, so basically the excess funding so it's accumulated surplus over time is at 5.7 million versus last year at 4.2. So it's good improvement in terms of the overall surplus in the township's budget. Net investment in capital assets of about 39 or just under $40 million. So that's after depreciation. So the net book value or what's showing on the financial statements in terms of the assets is just under 40 million. And total reserves were 5.6 with a reserve, and total reserves this year were 5.6 with total reserve funds. So the reserve funds are set aside for specific purposes. There is a 46 million set aside. Okay, this is the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. So again, kind of like the income statement, if you think about it. It shows line by line, all the revenue, all the money coming in, and then all the expenses or all the money going out. And that is done by sort of operational department, which is required under the standards. So overall property tax increase in pills was about 2% increase from the year before, pretty consistent with the budget. So you can see we have the budget column in there as well. There was a decrease in government grants, which was consistent with the funding agreements. There was some additional funding agreements last year for things like COVID reopening and those kind of programs. So that's coming back down. Again, fairly consistent with the budget. We knew that those were going to come down. And there was an increase in total expenses. So you can see 2020 was about 10.9, increased to 11.4, but again, below the budget. But increase was attributable to a change in the landfill cost, primarily due to a change in the landfill cost liability and amortization. So we do reflect the estimated cost of closing down the landfill, and that does get updated every year. So there was just an increase in that cost. Okay, and then you can see the overall accumulated surplus of the organization at the very bottom. In terms of where money was spent this year, so where did we spend the biggest amount? This is not inconsistent with prior years, but transportation would be the top cost. So roads, protection would be the second largest, and then general government would be the third largest, with some spent on recreation, environmental, planning, development, and health. Okay. In terms of, so that's obviously a fairly quick little summary of the financial statements for this year. But the total, to summarize, total capital additions this year about 3.8 million. Half of the annual expenditures consistent with prior years relate to transportation, followed by protection and general government. And there's really no new significant accounting standard developments to note at this point. And that is it. Does anyone have any questions? There's a very quick speed through. Just trying to make sure I get through it before my internet turns off on me.
You did a great job.
That's it. I keep getting the little thing that says the connection unstable. So I was like,
We've all had that Zoom experience from home.
I was like, of all the times. Anyway.
Okay, any questions from any member of council? Bill?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We haven't had an updated assessment since what, 2016, I believe is the last time we had an updated. Am I correct?
Through your worship to Councilor McDonald, you mean property assessment, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the last date was January 1st of 2016. So
Yeah.
it was to be June 30th of 2019, I believe, to give MPAC a year and a half before the values would have come in. So we're still waiting another year, I think it is.
So my question I'm leading to is that if we had an updated assessment in regard to where the value of our assets, would that affect our final year reporting in any way, shape, or form?
I'll take it, Kara, through your worship to Councilor McDonald. It would increase the value of our land assets, and that obviously, like the rest of the property, but I wouldn't think it would be significant. Like those aren't, the land assets aren't the assets that we use to deliver the services. Like the buildings they would, but not any vacant land and whatnot. So I don't think it would be hugely impactful.
Income would be offset by expenses, what you're saying, to provide more service to more people.
No, I think what Bill is saying is, had we been reassessed, our income could have been greater because our assessment would have been higher. Is that not true?
Well, let me walk through it in my head, Kara, correct me if I'm wrong, but so if we have, like this hall particular would have been assessed a little bit higher. No, because we would do it at historical cost when we buy the asset, and that's over its life. So
Okay.
no, right now the market value does not impact the financial statements. It may in the future.
Okay. Okay, somebody had, Philip, go ahead.
So I just wanted to ask the question about internal control weaknesses, and then there was other observations and improvements that were provided to management. I'm just wondering how we incorporate them into operations going forward.
Through your worship to Councillor Smith, the no formal policy in place for authorizing, reviewing, and documenting pay changes. I mean, that's in the employee policy right now. I believe the HR committee is looking at that. No formal policy in place for estimating useful lives of capital assets. That's on me, and it's been on me for 3 years now. I hope to get to it. It is something that we need. It's those river banks that we need to operate in, myself and other managers, and it needs to reflect accurately, because I forget whether it's OCIF formula that's going to be based on our market values of our assets. So if we're not updating our data with accurate information, we may be losing money at some point.
So we'll keep coming back to you to make sure you get those banks done. Okay. That's on our list. Okay, any other questions or comments? I have, Michael, go ahead.
Just a comment to sincerely thank Kara and her team again, because they've been very patient with me in transitioning from caseware to the FMW financial statements. It's been a real big learning experience when two of the key gentlemen left and put a lot on one PSD workers' plate and mine. And Kara and them have been very accommodating and always great to work with, seriously.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Okay, we have a motion moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Bill McDonald. Whereas the report has now been uploaded and that council received the audit findings report from NMP LLP as presented by Kara Chesney for information, and further that the audited financial statements be approved as presented, subject to final approval to Arena financial statements, said statements to be approved May 25th, 2022. So the Arena's doing theirs tomorrow, is that it?
They are. Even if I was ready with my financial statements, Madam Mayor, we were still waiting on the Arenas. So they all came at the same time, whether it's COVID impact or whatever. It's been
Okay,
fun.
all right. All those in favor? Carried. And again, thank you very much, Kara.
Thank you again for having me. It was again a pleasure working with everyone again this year.
I hope you feel better soon.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we want to take just a 5-minute break? Have a quick bathroom break and a coffee and then come back? Okay, we've had our coffee, or we're having our coffee while we talk. So our next motion is the Fire Emergency Service Report, moved by Bill McDonald, seconded by Sherry Wan, that council received for information the CFFR and Central Frontenac Bylaw Enforcement Activity Report dated May the 24th, 2022. Any questions or comments on the report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay. And this one we're doing, right?
They're both will be deferred if it's in the resolution.
Okay, so moved by Victor Hayes and seconded by Philip Smith. Whereas the township has enabled our current fire department, known as Central Frontenac Fire and Rescue, pursuant to bylaw 2018-19, as amended by bylaw 2021-68. 68?
That's it?
Okay,
Yep. Mhm.
okay.
That's a bonus.
And whereas the manager of emergency services / fire chief has identified a need to update the bylaw to ensure it meets current statutory and municipal needs, and is recommending repealing the previous bylaws and passing a new enabling regulating bylaw. And whereas the CAO clerk is recommending that this report and bylaw be deferred to allow staff and council more time to review both documents prior to adoption, and further that both documents be brought back to council at the June 14th, 2022 meeting. Discussion? Yes, if you have your questions, save them. All those in favor? Carried. And moved by Philip Smith and seconded by Victor Hayes, that council received the report entitled Adoption of Fire Prevention Policy and Draft Bylaw, prepared by the Manager of Emergency Services / Fire Chief for information. And whereas the CAO clerk is recommending that this report and bylaw be deferred to allow staff and council more time to review both documents prior to adoption, and further that both documents be brought back to council at the June 14th, 2022 meeting. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Motion moved by Victor Hayes and seconded by Philip Smith. Whereas the Government of Ontario enacted Bill 27, Working for Workers Act 2021 on December the 2nd, 2021, which amended the Ontario Employment Standards Act 2000, the ESA. And whereas the ESA established a requirement for employers with 25 or more employees in Ontario to prepare a written policy addressing disconnecting from work to be in place by June 2nd, 2022. And whereas the CAO clerk, in consultation with our lawyer, has prepared a policy with respect to disconnecting from work for council's approval. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council approve the disconnecting from work policy as recommended by the CAO clerk to meet the June 2nd, 2022 deadline. Discussion. I breached it the other day when I called Kathy and said, I know you're not working, but things are blowing around.
There certainly is certain, in the policy, there is certainly talk about those kinds of things.
Emergencies.
Emergency things, yes.
Bill and then Sherry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a question in regard to disconnect from work. I understand the whole philosophy behind it and when it's coming in and why it's coming in, because there are people, that work 24/7, and I'm very guilty of calling some people and asking questions on weekends. So are there going to be exceptions to that bylaw, except for example, in this would not apply to a public works department?
No.
Or is it basically administration? And does it apply during things like states of emergencies? We know yet.
It applies to all employees, but there are exceptions to the rule, which is an emergency, health and safety, that kind of thing. Okay, any other, Sherry?
My comments are basically the same through you, Madam Mayor. Was just that I understand there are different variables, so perhaps Public Works might run under a different, it'd be structured differently, but no.
Basically, we all have to under the disconnect for work policy, but there is exceptions to that because of Public Works, of course, when winter storms, emergencies, and we're able to do that. But that would have to be recorded as such. That's all.
Okay, that was
Under the
my,
managers, yeah,
my thinking, because there are times that they would have to be phoned
absolutely,
to come into work and,
absolutely,
but not on their vacation or something.
correct.
But if,
And the cemeteries are in the same, are exactly the same, because
Right.
Donna may have to get, be called out to go on a weekend to go get maps and send stuff to the caretakers for cemeteries. It's exactly the same.
but in actual fact, if an example is, let's say there was a tree on the road, if you call the office and you do the emergency public works number, you will get the person who's on duty and report the issue there. You can also report things through citywide if you're so inclined to, once you get on to doing it. Tyson sent a link one time and I've never tried it, but it is a possibility. But if it's a state of emergency or somebody's going to be hurt, then we can definitely contact staff, but it can't be just because we want to talk to them about something on a Sunday afternoon.
Just follow up, do these conditions also apply to township contractors that might be working on a full-time basis?
I don't know.
Not from ours is just dealing with employees only, not the contractors. Now, if there's another company, like the other company, maybe the contractors work for a different company, they would have to if they're considered their employees. It's all employees. Doesn't say anything about contractors.
Basically, through you, Madam Mayor, is it applies to public employees, not necessarily private employees?
No, it covers all employees. You have to have a written policy if you have more than 25 employees. Okay, any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. All right. Moved by Philip Smith and seconded by Victor Hayes. This was small print. Whereas telecommunication towers do not fall within the regular Planning Act process, and whereas CRINS-SNIRC offers the technical expertise to review applications and provides comments on behalf of municipalities. And where CAO clerk is recommending to council that we become members of the CRINS-SNRIC to receive and process applications for radio communications facilities on behalf of the municipality in our capacity as the land use authority as recognized by Industry Canada, and to adopt the CRINS-SNRIC reference protocol issue 5 and subsequent amendments. And whereas the CO clerk and the deputy clerk are hereby appointed as the contact persons for the municipality for receiving reports from those groups and are the signing authority for letters of concurrence on behalf of the municipality in consultation with the county planner. And whereas the total fee for the radio communication facility review be set at $2,500, $2,550, sorry, yeah, $2,550 to be collected by CRINS-SNRIC, with the township portion being $750 to be reimbursed by CRINS-SNRIC. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the CAO clerk and become a member of CRINS-SNRIC to receive and process applications for radio communication facilities on behalf of the municipality in our capacity as the land use authority as recognized by Industry Canada. And further, that council pass a bylaw appointing CRINS-SNRIC as the designated representative to receive and process applications and to adopt a protocol for radio communications facilities later in the meeting. It's a long one. Discussion. In other words, these folks will do all of the negotiation for towers for us.
Yes, they do. And actually, back in 2015 is when North Frontenac Township joined with CRINS. They had made a presentation at the county that we were all at. Because when we talked to Todd White, he said, yeah, Kathy, I think you were there. So, but at the time, I think our municipality didn't take on and go on as a member. So I think that's the whole thing, is because it's none under the land use, under the Planning Act, they will do all the, instead of having a different company, and they have to verify all these different criteria. So this way, CRINS would do all that work for us. And then I spoke with Sonia, it's the same as price as North Frontenac has. It's about 750. Because I asked her, because she'll still need to look at them, and they figured that $750 covers our costs.
Okay. Philip, question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to ask, what is the process today when an application comes?
We've only had one, right?
We have two. Cindy can mention to you because she has been involved with them with Sonia.
Yes, so far we've had 2 tower requests come in. So there's an agency that acts on behalf of Rogers that communicates with us. And so we coordinate with them to give them the circulation list of all of the adjoining property owners and the mailing addresses. And then they look after organizing the notices in the paper and the mail outs. We facilitated some of that advertising by putting it on our website and whatnot. But they do the bare minimum in terms of following the protocols that Industry Canada has. So with CRINS being involved, they will do a little bit of a deeper dive. It's like a third party who's kind of organizing and making sure that all of the criteria are met, and it gives the municipalities, conservation authorities, other stakeholders an opportunity to give any comments. So right now that process we've had the one letter of concurrence that I think came to our last council meeting. So it was vetted by our planning staff, but we didn't go into the robust review that CRINS would undertake as the specialists in the system. So
yeah, they do a more comprehensive review
Yeah.
of the tower, including siting. And if the neighbor says they don't agree where it should go, they will speak with the neighbor and they'll get that all ironed out, from what I understand in all the literature I've read. And then I was speaking with Tara at North Frontenac, and that's what she said they do as well.
So the one, we do have one more application that will have to go under the old regime that will come to us for the letter of concurrence, but any new applications coming forward, if we go with this, will all be processed through CRINS.
Okay, Bill?
Through you, Madam Mayor, maybe Cindy can answer the question. Is we already have, 9 or 10 towers in Central Frontenac? But I don't remember any of this process happening before these towers went up. But my next question would be, is there some kind of process if they're removing towers? Because that has happened here also. I did wonder, where was the research when these towers that are already here went up? I don't remember any time.
There wasn't. I can speak on a few of them because Glenn even looked at them because they weren't in the Planning Act. We still went ahead and made recommendations to come forth, but there was no criteria that was followed through, not like this in depth.
And if I remember correctly, the municipality could not stop a tower from being put up. You just had to work with them to try to make sure that it was the least offensive spot and put up the best way to keep people from not feeling that they didn't have a say.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it's good to take it out of our hands and put it into a third party. And it's paid for by the person requesting the tower. Okay, Bill, and then Philip?
The second part of my question was, if they're removing them, because they have removed a tower, if anyone remembers, on Highway 7, just east of Arden Turn, there was a tower there that was taken down a year or so ago, and I'm just wondering if there's a process for removing them.
I am not aware of any process, but that would be, I'm assuming if it's a federal responsibility to approve them going up, any approval to remove them would probably also have to go through Industry Canada. But as far as I'm aware, there was nothing that came through the municipality with respect to that.
Yeah, Philip?
So I guess my concern, Madam Mayor, is this not a service we're already contracted with the county to provide?
No.
Our planning?
Sonia will make recommendations on it, but she doesn't go into the depth because she's governed under the Planning Act. There's nothing on the Planning Act that has to do the in-depth investigation. So unfortunately.
Towers are different, whole different regulations, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and
it was
we'll still rely
CRTC.
on the county for their specific advice with respect to planning matters, but there's so many other considerations that CRINs are specialists with. And Sonia worked with them very closely when she was with the city of Kingston as well. And she definitely concurred that this was the way to go because they know what to do, they know what questions to ask, and
Not mine. Okay. So the planning does play a role, but they don't play the depth of the role that this group would. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Carried. Bill's hand would really have been up if it wasn't on his phone.
You might as well stay there for the-
Okay. This one's bigger. Moved by Victor Hayes and seconded by Philip Smith. Whereas the township instituted a mandatory sewage system reinspection program pursuant to bylaw 2018-49 as amended by bylaw 2020-04 to inspect sewage systems older than 10 years within the township and has appointed in said bylaw, Rideau Valley Conservation Authority building inspectors for the purpose of this reinspection program. And whereas the township wishes to contract with Rideau Valley Conservation Authority to administer and carry out the reinspection program for the 2022 year on the terms and conditions set out in the draft agreement attached to this report. Now therefore be it resolved that council receive this report and draft agreement for information, and further that the mayor and CAO clerk be authorized to sign said agreement on behalf of the municipality. Questions or comments? Vicky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, it doesn't say what lakes or areas are being done this year in the background information. So I was curious of what we were doing.
We talked about the West Basin, finishing Eagle Lake, I believe. And Hungry Lake as well. So finish, yeah, Eagle and Hungry had both been started, I believe. Or-
Yeah, there were some catch-up properties, ones that they didn't get to or got missed in the first go round. So in 2019, so the properties that didn't get done, that should have been done for those lakes.
Yes.
And then the West Basin of Charlotte Lake. And then, yes, I think I think that pretty much takes up, there's about 318 properties on the list. So I think that takes up pretty much the full list.
Hopefully
this
they can
year.
Get through
Yeah.
them all this year. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Victor Hayes, that the minutes of the Kennebec Recreation Committee meeting held April the 18th, 2022 be received for information. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Philip Smith, that the minutes of the Oso Recreation Committee meeting held November the 7th, 2021 be received for information. Discussion, all those in favor? Carried. And I got two for the Rec Committee. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that the minutes of the Oso Recreation Committee meeting held October the 24th, 2021 be received for information. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that the approved minutes of the Economic Development Committee meetings held December the 8th, 2021, March 30th, 2022, and April 6th, 2022 be received for information. All those in favor? Carried. I just want to slow down and see who's going to put their hand up before I ask. Okay. Sorry about that. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Victor Hayes, that council receive the following correspondence received for May 24th, 2021, and it's 1 to 3. Sorry, 2022, 1 to 3. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Now, no public meetings. We are at bylaws and we have a motion moved by Victor Hayes, seconded by Philip Smith, that bylaw 2022-34 being a bylaw to appoint CRINS as the designated representative to receive and process applications and to adopt a protocol for radio communications facilities be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of May 2022. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Are there any notices of motions?
None.
Any giving of notice of motions?
No,
Any new or other business?
no, there's not.
And no closed session?
Correct.
Okay, not bad, 5:11. I have a motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Victor Hayes, that bylaw 2022-35, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held May 24th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of May 2022. And further, that this meeting be adjourned until Monday, June 6, 2022, said special meeting being held in person at Soldiers Memorial Hall, Charlotte Lake. All those in favor? Carried.